Robin Prouty. I'm the founder and executive director of the Descendants of the St. Louis University Enslaved. Before I start, I will ask my elders permission to speak. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to introduce this next speaker, and his name is Michael Blake. Michael Blake is a dynamic leader known for his role as president of Next Level Sports and Entertainment, which is the only national black sports TV network. Also, he is the CEO of Atlas Strategy Group and former vice chair at large of the Democratic National Committee. He has spearheaded initiatives focused on economic empowerment, access to capital, with a mission and a goal to bring consciousness to capitalism. Michael has an extensive experience in public service, including roles in the Obama-Biden presidential campaigns and administration. He is the CEO of Kairos Democracy Project, and to find out more information about that project, you can look up Kairos, Kairos, democracyproject.com. So without further ado, we want to bring up this dynamic brother, Mr. Michael Blake. Thank you. Ain't nothing like a brother who knows what he's doing, who knows who he is, okay? Thank you. Inspiration.
Peace, kings and queens. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
First and foremost, all praise and honor to the risen Savior that allows us to be here today, and grateful to be in the house and in the space with each of you. To the elders, it's an honor to be in your space, and gratitude for you allowing us to be here. Pastor, thank you for allowing me to be in your space itself. I bring you greetings as a good Jamaican from two different churches, not just one. So I bring you greetings from Allen Chapel AME in Washington, D.C., Reverend Dr. Michael E. Bell Sr., who is a candidate for bishop right now, so keep him in your prayers. And then from Union Grove Missionary Baptist Church in the Bronx, New York, where in just 3 weeks I'll be ordained to join in the clergy. So it is a blessing to be in the house of Vernon right now. And so before we keep going, it is imperative, and I do this anytime she asks me to be here, and I'm grateful for the introduction, so thank you, and honored in that regard and all that's happening in St. Louis. But can we give honor to Robin Simmons, what she's doing, and show her love for the continual attacks that are sexist and racist in nature, and let's call them what they are. That I have no belief whatsoever that if it was doing any of the same things for white folk, that should begin these attacks. That's right. And that we be in these dynamics right now. So we got to be clear to that degree and regard, and know you have a village that has your back all day, every day. And to the Firstrepair team, thank y'all for all that y'all continue to do. I know Sister Alyssa is handling business right now. I don't know, does someone have the PowerPoint we sent? Oh, there we go. I got you up there. There we go. I was about to say we're about to freestyle it, like in good Bronx fashion right there, to that degree. It is, we come from the space, you can keep moving to the next one. We come from a space of the operation of Kairos. And for any of us that reflect on time, there is a difference between Chronos and Kairos. Chronos is the chronological order that you look at on your watch and your clock. But we move from a spirit of Kairos, which is opportunities to create moments. And we should not see it at all as a coincidence that we are in this space right now, with this convening being gathered at this time for what has happened this week. So there is a Kairos moment that is happening for us to even be here, right here. And we have to accept that when talking about the libation and blessings to the ancestors. The ancestors already knew we were going to be here at this day. We didn't understand that we would be here at this day, at this time, and what is happening this week, and the internal reality of understanding that you have a responsibility to do something with that.
That's right.
You know, it is not our job just to watch in the season, but you're supposed to be active in the season. When you think about the work of why we were asked to be here around leadership, I always try to make this very practical in the vision of where we come from this. So let me give personal context and we'll go from there. I'm from Bronx, New York, born and raised. I'm one of two that was born in the Bronx. Everyone else in my family was born in Jamaica. My full name is Michael Alexander Blake, and for the connection of it all, you can't have the history of Tulsa without thinking about the history of what happens in other countries and communities, such as in Jamaica. And the reality is, yes, we talk about Charleston as the port, but folks don't realize that the other place that was a continual route where they took our people was to Kingston, Jamaica, and the understanding of that linkage. And so when my family named me Michael Alexander Blake, after Michael Manley and Alexander Bustamante, I don't see it as coincidental of being aligned in the work of what is happening right here. I got some folk in the back who understand what I'm saying right now. Michael Manley was very clear, as was Alexander Bustamante, about the responsibility of what are we doing for black folk in that same lineage of Haile Selassie, who went to the League of Nations and said, no, you are not going to talk to black folk in this way. You're not going to colonize us. You're not going to conquer us in that regard. That is the lineage that we come from. That is the reason why I started by saying, peace, kings and queens. That we have to understand who we are before we go any further. So we talk about leadership and the mold that we are in. Our theory of change is not about access to capital, it's not about access to contracts, none of those things. To me, it's about access to the connection. We already have the power. It is the understanding that if we are connected and aligned, then we can do powerful things. Be very clear that when we're having a conversation on reparations and what has to happen. It is the fear of folks that don't want us to have power through policy and economy.
That's right.
That's what this fundamentally boils down to. It is the fear of, wait a minute, you talking to me about you gonna have equity? No, you can't have that. You want to have justice? No, you can't have that. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna ignore the laws that have been established that could help you because we want to make sure we're focused on the laws that are helping us. I always say to folks that there is a difference between prejudice and racism. See, sometimes we confuse the two. Everyone can have some level of prejudice, but what you should be focused on breaking are the isms, because racism is when you have institutionalized it in the process. It is the reminder that it is impossible for a black person in this country to be racist in the country because these systems were not created for us. And so when we talk about reparations, you are focused on changing and reforming policies to create equity and justice for us. And if you are uncomfortable with that conversation, you should probably not be here for the next few days. So our vision and our mission is very clear. Our vision is what are we doing for us as people of color to win, as black folk to win. And how do we make sure we are creating that? Because in the mission and the objectives are very clear. If there's nothing else you take away from my comments, determine our end goals and objectives and then work backwards.
Come on. Yeah.
Determine our end goals and objectives and then work backwards. I'll try to crystallize it as this. When people talk about what happened in the race massacre, we got to make sure we call it as such. Earlier on that day, there actually was a game that was happening between Oklahoma City and Tulsa Sailors, and it was two baseball teams, and then they had to decide they were going to leave to move for other places. The team from Tulsa was able to get out. Oklahoma City was actually a team was still here. They weren't able to leave in that regard. Now, why is that connected to this? If any of y'all like sports, who likes sports in this room? Y'all like sports right here? Okay, we got a Celtics fan right now. Just pray for the Celtics fan. They feeling themselves. As a New Yorker, I'm gonna let y'all rock. Y'all gonna win. It's gonna be okay right there. You know, but this is important when you think about sports, and this is connected to my point about goals and objectives. I tell my team all the time, there's a difference between activity and progress.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. In sports, at the end of the day, what are you trying to do? Win. It's very simple. Win. You're not out here like, man, I just want to practice more. No, we good on that. I'm trying to win.
That's right.
When we were with President Obama, again, I'm laying context for where I'm going, if that's all right. When we were President Obama in that first campaign, campaign, and folks laughed at us, saying there's no way that a man named Barack Hussein Obama will win an election. It's not possible, right? And he came to Iowa and he told this story to lay the groundwork, Pastor. He said, you know, when I was running for senator in Illinois, I was at the St. Patrick's Day parade, and they laughed at me. They laughed at me. I was the last entry of the parade at the St. Patrick's Day parade, which meant that folks had been drinking for hours. And so when I started walking, they were calling me Barack Hussein Osama for 4 hours. But he said because I stayed with it, a year later, the same parade that I was in the back, I was the Grand Marshal of the parade. Because I was clear that I was focused on winning. And then when we started winning throughout the first election and things were happening throughout that, we asked him, you know, Senator, why aren't you excited? We've just won 12 races in a row. And he said, I come at this like Magic Johnson. I'm not here for conference championships, I'm here for titles.
Come on, man.
Why are we in this? To win. I say that to start here because we have to be very clear about our objectives, because when you're clear with your objectives, then you know how you're trying to win. Too often we are coming to these conversations around reparations and we're only talking about it from a goal of how we're achieving reparations, recognizing that you gotta be real clear about your objectives to achieve that, and also be clear that folks don't like to lose, so that when you beat them, they're not gonna walk away, they're gonna come back, i.e. what happened this week. Because they are saying very clearly, yes, you had a victory, you may feel good, but no, we can't let you have this thing. So we can keep going. So in this regard, we're very intentional about the team that we put together to win. Because I'm coming from a space that if I want to win, I want folks that understand how we win. You know, I love you and all, but I say this when we're back home at church, you know, I could have a lot of people that could walk with me and do all these things, but I don't need folks that are parking lot Christians around me. What do I mean by that? That means the folks that come to church and they rock for 2 hours and then they talk about you as soon as they get outside. We gotta be clear who's on the team. Because in this fight for reparations, you're gonna have a lot of folks that are gonna show up for your meetings, they're gonna show up for the conference calls, and show up for the Zooms, and they're gonna say that they're on the team. But as soon as it gets hard, as soon as the lawsuits come, as soon as Judicial Watch shows up, as soon as the Supreme Court shows up, then all of a sudden, they can't find me for some reason. The same phone number you had doesn't work all of a sudden. Be clear about your team and how we are focused on our goals and our objectives. Keep going, please. And so, to that degree, we are very clear what are we trying to achieve. First is equity. We are not here for equality. Reparations is not about equality.
That's right.
It's about equity. It's a very different approach and mindset in how we are moving right now. At the end of the day, if we focus on equality, we're never going to win. We wouldn't be having a conversation about reparations if we didn't have inequity. You have to be very clear. Leadership, that goes back to the team dynamic. Who is on my team? And recognizing who do we have in these places for what we're trying to build. Which means that sometimes you have to make changes on your team. While you're going through the battle. I'm gonna let the Boston Celtic fan have a moment right here. You all right, okay? What's your name, sister? Aziza. So I gotta give credit where credit's due. The Celtics had been getting close the last few years. And what did they do last year? No, but I'm trying to give you a compliment. They made a change. They went and got Drew Holiday. They put in some other pieces. They're like, we have the stars, but we need a few specialists. While Judicial Watch is coming, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court is coming, all these different things, it is time to be comfortable in saying, I gotta make some changes to my team. So the person who has been the lawyer, okay, maybe I need a new lawyer. Maybe I need someone new for communication. Maybe I need someone that is new when it comes to the finances. But how do we make those changes and make those connections to build from there? Because we have to be clear around people and profit and what's going on. When I talk about consciousness to capitalism, yes, some may say, well, there's a lot of ways to pursue this. But at the end of the day, we are talking about economic justice. Fundamentally. That is the whole frame. And the topic that is described more than any else in the Bible is poverty. Folks sometimes forget that. And I know in the AME context, we can appreciate that. And so in that dynamic, it goes to community. Next one, please. So when we think through how we come at this, our recommendation is coming at this from a Kairos lens. How do we have the connection? How do we have the conversation? How do we have celebration? And then how do we have cultivation, culmination? So why do we treat it in those first dynamics? First, I got to figure out how do I connect with you. And understand that, as Robin said, we have 35 states that are here. It won't make any sense that you came all this way and then you leave without connecting with people from other cities and places to understand how are you working and how are you winning and how did they come after you and what were the tactics that you utilized so that we can figure out how we utilize this together. It wasn't the purpose of you winning by yourself. Again, if you are here to win by yourself, this is not the room for you.
All right. That's right.
So start with the connection, but then it goes into what's the conversation? What are we leaning into from there so that I can actually learn the strategies? There's a big difference from just hearing something versus listening. And so in the strategies of what's happening in these next few days, how are we being very intentional of having the conversation to lean in on what actually was happening here? And how were they teaming this up? And how are we going to move? And rather than us being in the space of the disappointment that existed by the Oklahoma Supreme Court doing what they did this week, we then have to ask ourselves, well, what are we doing next?
There it is.
Because let me be real clear. On the other side, on the federal level, the folks that lost today in the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, when it comes to abortion and choice, let me be real clear. They're not going away. They're not going to just say, like, you know what, man, we lost today, let's just go on home. That's not how, they're having conversations right now. Remember I was talking about Senator Obama, then became President Obama. Folks forget that on Inauguration Day, Mitch McConnell had a dinner in D.C. that night. And the framing of the dinner is, how do we make him a one-term president? So he was on stage and was like, you know, I'm going to acknowledge you as president, I'm going to smile in your face right here. But that same night, they were having conversations on how to try to take him out. So how are we focused on the conversations and strategies that are here? So within that is cultivation and culmination. That goes back to the objectives. How can we be clear around chronos to kairos? When we leave from this week, being very clear of what is the timetable of the actions we're trying to achieve in our respective cities and states. Do you have a legislative calendar where you know that your bill is on the calendar? If it's not on the calendar, why is it not on the calendar? And how do we get on the calendar? And how do we make these adjustments? And recognizing that some folks who are sponsors and co-sponsors of bills are not doing it because they're trying to advance you, but they're trying to block you.
There it is.
Oh, that quiet right there.
There it is.
It's being real clear of who are the ones that you are doing the work. When I came up, I said, we have been paying attention to you. I was a co-sponsor of the bill in New York. We know the ones who do the work. And you pay attention who does the work elsewhere. But we have to be very clear of the objectives of what we're trying to achieve. So again, be clear on the timetable. When are you trying to get that win? Is it happening not just from a legislative standpoint, but also a judicial standpoint? Because be very clear, even when you have the wins, i.e. the city of Evanston, you then have folks like Judicial Watch who are spending their time to try to sue you. So there has to be, yes, a legislative strategy and a communication strategy and a stakeholder strategy, but it has to be the judicial one because that is their approach right now. But then when we have the wins, you have to build in time to celebrate. Because too often we seem to think that it's okay just to do the work and then move on, but not celebrate when you have the win. There is a reason why we don't just talk about watch night from a casual standpoint in the church. See, a lot of folks will look at it like, oh, it's just a celebration that happens on New Year's Eve. No, that was when folks were watching the clock, chronos to kairos, and then they celebrated what was then to happen. But understand that it didn't stop on that day, because when you think about why do we have Juneteenth, is because others were still waiting. So we have to build in time for celebrations along the way. Please keep going. So when we think about the framing of this, we come at this and are encouraging people to think about this in 4 different, very practical ways. What is the policy objective? What is the political objective? What is the economic objective? And the social justice objective. We have to be very clear in our organizing strategies. Because again, when we're talking about the work of reparations, this is about a policy and policies that we're trying to get done. because policies were established to hurt us. It's really that simple. You can't talk about the history of this country without recognizing that it is a repeated, consistent, and continual dynamic of policies that are racist in their nature that hurt us. So when we're coming at this around a reparations lens, you have to come at this from what is the policy lens that we are changing, and equally recognizing that there has to be a political lens. I have never understood when folks will tell you, you know what, I don't do this political thing. I don't really do this thing around elections. I can't do this thing. But you care about the elections when you care about what's going on your block. Because I have a feeling they call you when there's a pothole, or they'll call you when there's a sanitation issue, or they'll call you when the check doesn't come in. So you do care about politics. So you can't be saying I care about policy occasionally, but I don't care about political. They are intertwined. They are one and the same. And then you have to recognize that then there has to be the history of the social justice. See, if it's all right, can we take it there for a little bit? Because as a New Yorker, I have to remind folks, because sometimes people don't want to be clear about the history of Trump and his family. Trump's daddy and granddaddy were listed in KKK writings. Don't ignore that. Don't ignore the fact that Trump and his daddy were sued because they wouldn't let access to black and brown folk to get access to housing, because they didn't think it was acceptable for black people to have access to housing. Be clear about this is the same man that called for the Central Park Five to be killed with the death penalty, knowing that they were innocent. Be clear that this is the same one that talks about how Mexicans are rapists. Don't be confused about these things. You can't have policy and political without having social. So you have to mobilize in that degree. Why is that connected to reparations? Because it ties to economic. Yes, Dr. King was speaking about I Have a Dream, but you cannot ignore how Dr. Dorothy Irene Height was very clear in mobilizing and saying, make sure that he has the opportunity for to speak. You can't ignore what was going on legislatively when Julian Bond was saying, what's the legislative changes that we have that? You cannot ignore the dynamics of Mahalia Jackson saying, tell them about the Dream March. You cannot ignore how Andrew Young was saying we will have economic boycotts. They are intertwined all in the same regard. So if you want to talk about justice, you must have all four.
Come on.
And so there has to be the approach of, again, determine our end goals and our objectives, and the framing of how we're utilizing our chronos to kairos, and the framing and the understanding that it's policy, political, economic, and social. All four is how we have wins when it comes to reparations. Next one, please. So in that degree, let me give you some examples of power building we did. We talk about this from a dynamic. The president of the Washington Commanders is actually my line brother, good alpha man. I don't know what Greeks are in the room right now, but okay, Sora, that's why I knew I like you right there, Sora. There we go, right there. So the first black president of the NFL being an alpha man, Jason Wright. We helped and showed the team multiple things that they could work on, because several of the players wanted to find ways to lean in around criminal justice. And Chase Young, who was the defensive rookie player of the year, talked about how even with all the stardom that he had, and even though he came from a family that had law enforcement, he was still concerned as a black man to go outside and interact with cops. And when you are wondering again about policy and the necessity of policy, and you're wondering why we keep talking about the necessity of body cams, recognize when you saw what came out yesterday in Atlanta in the video that came out from 2 years ago, where a man with his hands up on the ground, afraid for his life, moving from the cops, gets shot 7 times, and they try to act like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about right here. So when we think about this is an example of political organizing. We train football players to talk through utilizing their voice for power. Why? Because last year, of the 100 highest viewed shows on TV, take a guess of how many of them were NFL football games. Give me a number. 80. You said all of them. Give me a number. 92. Give me a number. 86. 93 of the 100 highest viewed shows TV were NFL games. Stay with me on this. When does the NFL regular season start? September. So wouldn't it make sense when we're talking through our strategies of political, policy, social, and economic justice to find ways to interact with football players, current and former, because you will have access to the most eyeballs to move the needle at the time when we have elections that are coming. It's all intertwined with the strategy.
Yeah.
So we were very clear about how do we find the people. There's a reason why the NFL changed things to utilize stadiums for voting. It's a reason why last year many people didn't pick up on this. The NBA, the Social Justice Coalition, had every team play the day before the election so that every team was off on election day. So how do you go back home and say to your colleges and to your professional teams, you know what? I think it's essential that we have social justice opportunities with our teams around the policies we care about. Because let me be real clear, the athletes and their families care a lot about what's going on with the economics. Because for them, winning on the field or on the court was their reparations. But they have a responsibility to help our communities get in as well.
That's right.
Next one, please. Indelible. Many folks don't realize this. This is a black-owned consulting company out of Florida that has more than 200 employees and more than 70 million annual revenue. So when someone tells you you got to go call a McKinsey or a KPMG or any other of that, you tell them, no, I want to go find this black firm called Indelible that can do everything that I need within that. Now, why am I put this here? Because when we talk through strategy and we talk through the team, that means that it's not just going to be your full-time and part-time employees that are going to do the work. You got to figure out who are the consultants and advisors going to help you along the way. And you also got to think about who are the people that don't need to be in the front, but need to be in the shadows to be moving. You think about the reflections of Jesus, and when we talk to disciples, many times they talk about how they went into the wilderness. They had to reset sometimes. And so it's important that we think through the strategy of that as well. Next one, please. GoFundMe. Many people may not recognize this. We talk about economic reparations and again, case studies that are out here. Not only can GoFundMe be utilized in crisis, because too often people don't think about it in crisis, but the second largest usage that is actually happening is around family and youth sports. Why? Because a lot of times that family may have that athlete that needs to go and travel somewhere, but they don't have that extra few $100, $200 to go travel. GoFundMe launched an effort called Black Joy. So how do we create economic justice for our communities? I'm giving you examples of different causes that can help our cause.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we have to be intentional of who else is doing the work on the team, even if it doesn't say reparations.
That's right.
Too often when I was in the White House, I had folks come to me. I ran all the Black Hours for 2.5 years, President Obama. They'll say to me, Barack Obama didn't do anything for black folk. I was like, well, that's pretty ignorant. So let's think about that. Well, when it be direct around the Minority Business Development Agency and black businesses that had the highest growth of contracts ever in their history, or funding that went to HBCUs, or what we did around addressing crack versus cocaine, those were very direct when it came to black folk. And when it doesn't say black directly, we can talk about the other policies. I don't know, like health care so that people can still be alive, or education, and all these different things. But totally, you can tell me all the things we didn't do about black folk. But I say that to say that you have to be clear in saying that there's many ways that the reparations wins happen, even if it doesn't say reparations. And so how do you help others on the team in your places, corporate, philanthropic, and otherwise, to help you achieve that? Next one, please. So when we think through that, there are efforts like Campaign Tobacco-Free Kids. Now, why on earth would this be relevant to a reparations conversation? Let me be real clear. We should probably help more of our kids to breathe and to live so they can have a future. Because what is the purpose of us having victories with reparations if we don't have the next ones that come after us? And so you got to find the causes that are relevant to this. Why is this relevant? Because a fundamental reason that there were victories that happened within tobacco and other entities happened through the courts and through law settlements and lawsuits. In the same way lawsuits are trying to take us out, be mindful of how do we have lawsuits that help us to win. So whenever you hear efforts like Shades of Mass or Pinckney West and other entities like that, these are black-led causes that are finding ways for us to win when it comes to the legal system. Brian Stevenson said it best, the opposite of poverty is not wealth, the opposite of poverty is justice. And so being very intentional with that. Next one, please. So when we think through these practical approaches, there is the data that is relevant in how we do this. I have started an effort called the Kairos Democracy Project. I was saying this earlier to Sister Robin, we were talking earlier around that we have to have the intersection of race and democracy. We have to have the intersection of storytelling and democracy, because when you think about what's happening this year, I refuse to not have a scenario where reparations is not a part of the policy and political conversations. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking through what is happening here, you can talk to me about all the things that concern you about President Biden, and I understand that I was an elected official. I'm not going to make you happy every single time. But let me be real clear. I'd rather have someone that is actually trying to have me have a chance than the racist, sexist, homophobic, discriminatory, misogynistic man who does not care about black people, who's very clear that he wants to kill black folks. And I'm not just saying that theoretically. Look at what he did during COVID. His policies literally led to black people dying. Why on earth would I try to ignore that reality? And so when I think about this, why is it relevant? Because 3 polls have now come out that have said that the number one policy of concern that someone has is cost of living. But the number one policy that is leading someone voting for their candidate as opposed to their opponent is protecting democracy. People are internalizing, recognizing that, yes, I gotta think about economic justice in my household, but it's impossible me having that if we don't have a democracy. You can't separate the two. So in that regard, how do you have the conversations? How do you have the connections? And how do you celebrate? Again, it is important to have all of these because we have to connect in these spaces and ask someone very directly, what did you do to win? What were your objectives? Help me to understand when you didn't have the win. When we were changing the policies in New York around raise the age, we were one of the last 2 states where 16, 17-year-olds were being tried as adults. Khalif Browder was my constituent. We were like, yeah, we're not gonna do this. What did we do? We helped the budget. We didn't vote on the budget for a week. Because let me tell you, you know a quick way to make someone upset? Don't give them their money. You wanna negotiate with me? I'm happy to negotiate with you. Here's how we gonna negotiate. You're gonna give me what I want, then I'll vote on this bill. And be very practical about that end goal. And then when that happened and we won, we celebrated. And that's why when we go out and we have the tours and we go and see the city, I took time to walk just around this morning and last night. Why would we come to a space like this and not see the city? What is the purpose of being here in a historic place that they burned down and they killed our folk, but not see how we got rebuilt unless you're gonna celebrate the city? Next one, please. So when we think through the strategies and organizing and how to have practical wins, what is the data? Where do we have media? And who are the influencers? We tell people all the time, data doesn't lie, people do.
Right? Yeah. I like that.
People talk to me about, oh, these polls, Michael, these polls. I'm not sure about these polls. Polls are reflective of who you ask and what you ask and how you ask. So when someone is like, well, Donald Trump's getting 21% of black vote, let me be real clear. Donald Trump's not gonna get no 21% black vote. That's not gonna happen. What they're probably doing is saying, well, you know, I know you put your finger up. Let me tell you, I won a lot of elections. I'm gonna tell you right this. Joe Biden gonna win. You may not think about that. You may be putting your hand up. I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm just telling you, Donald Trump, here's how I'm gonna prove this point. There's no empirical way Donald Trump could be getting 21% of black folk and it be tied nationally. It's not mathematically possible. I'm just saying, you say see me in September. This is what I'm saying, sister. I just gave a data point. It is mathematically impossible for Donald Trump to be getting 21% of black votes and it to be tied. He actually would have to be probably up by 10 points right now, which by its own degree is recognizing that the data that has been put out for those polls were not accurate. Who put that poll out? The New York Times put that poll out on a Saturday because they knew it would lead to increased clicks. They recognized that the more accurate poll they put out 2 weeks later that actually showed he did not have 21%, which showed why Biden was ahead in these battleground states. You think if Donald Trump was really at 21%, why on earth would Donald Trump be showing up in the Bronx, New York, where I live, talking about he's doing a black rally? There's no way in the world Donald Trump won in New York City. But then they're having the AI visuals of trying to show you, well, all these people are with you. I say this to say that data is essential. When you were having your wins and you were having your wins, you didn't just randomly say, I'm just gonna create this policy. You looked at the data. You didn't just randomly come up with a number, you had the data. But then who's the media and how are you utilizing the media for these strategies? It doesn't make sense to me that we have organizing approaches and leadership approaches on changing policies, but we're not bringing media into that conversation. You need people to actually get the information out there. And it doesn't just mean the traditional outlets of your, linear news. It's also being creative of who's getting it out there. It's identifying the social media influencers and those that are out on TikTok and IG and Facebook and X. And you may not like those outlets, but it doesn't really matter if you don't like it, people are on them.
That's right.
And influencers are a part of the collective strategy of who are the people, whether it be on the ground or virtually and in social media, that can move this conversation. Why is that relevant? Because you've seen this in the last few years. I'll give you again a data point. There were 206 counties that voted for Barack Obama twice that then went to Donald Trump. Again, 206. Who are the people that are moving the people? None of us can get to 330 million people. But what you can do is figure out who has access to the other people. Please, next one. So within that, this is actually relevant to that slide. I didn't know I was going to put that one up. This is what I'm saying in the dynamic there. It is important in a reparations battle that you actually show folks, you know what? More people actually want us to help people with economic justice than otherwise. Too often, we get caught in just the word and can't get someone past the word. So you'll see someone like, well, a lot of folks are not supporting reparations across the country. Well, it's an intellectually lazy argument when someone just does that, right? It's like, okay, let me reframe the conversation. Do you want to have more money?
Yeah.
Do you believe there should be economic justice? Think it doesn't work? Let me show you an example. We talked about Affordable Care Act for a while. Then they're like, man, Obamacare. We don't like Obamacare. Okay, you don't like Obamacare. You like it when your kid can stay on your parents' plan until age 26? Oh yeah, I love that. You like it when seniors don't have the donut hole? Oh, we love that. You like it that prescription drugs can be a drug? Oh, we love that. But you don't like, well, that don't make sense to me. So I say that to say that track the data and then message it in ways to get the win. Because if your whole conversation, if you're talking to someone and they're not hearing you about reparations, but I flip it and talk about economic justice and equity and more money in the pocket and black and brown folk winning, that could probably lead to folks winning from there. Next one right there, because again, we're here about winning. Who these, there's no surprise that it's sisters that kept winning when it came to reparations. Sheila Jackson Lee, pray for her right now. She's going through her cancer battle out of Houston, what she is doing on the federal level. Dr. Cheryl Davis out of San Francisco Human Rights Commission. And again, we talk about policies. What did Mayor Breed do there? She's like, yeah, we're just gonna put $5 million into this. Full stop. And then Robin Ruth Simmons, Anybody heard of Robin Ruth Simmons? And the responsibility of this connection, I went to Northwestern, so I always have love of all things at Evanston, right? She didn't have to fight this fight. She could have decided, I'm just going to do something easy. She was like, I'm going to do this for our people. But how did it happen? It was a policy win. So we have to be very practical around the connection of the two. Next one, please. And again, give it your flowers there. So the situation, Judicial Watch. Let me be real clear. Judicial Watch has sued a lot of places and they've lost a lot of places. Be real clear. Just because someone's suing you don't mean they're smart. They've lost a lot. Our purpose, going back to sports, we're trying to win. People like to be around winners. They don't like being around losers. Remind them, Judicial Watch loses a lot. Because they're just out here putting frivolous things out there. And just because you had things with Fearless Fund and affirmative action, yes, there's other cases that can cause concern. But you got to ask yourself the situation. The situation is the San Francisco case and Evanston case. There are multiple cases that are out here where you can show people wins within that situation. We come at this from an objective and a lens of situation, action, result. Situation, action, result. I'm real clear. What is the situation I'm facing right here?
Yeah.
And within that situation, the 5 W's in H: who, what, when, where, how. But then I really focus on the why. Because I can know all those facts, but I need to know your why is right. I need to know that your core is right. Next one, please. I understand the situation, now I have the action. So the action is legislative and communication and policy and political and fundraising. What are the steps and the actions we are practically taking that are tied to our timeline? It's real great if you want to talk to me about your reparations strategy that you have for 2032 and 2034. That's wonderful. I'm happy to talk about that from a vision. What I need to understand is, what are you doing to help us be Judicial Watch now?
Right, that's right. Today.
That's why I need you to help me with that right here.
Yes.
And I need you to help me in terms of this lawsuit right here,
Yes.
and these legislators right here. And the ones who didn't vote for this, how do we vote them out? And the ones who did do this, how do we help them with fundraising to support them? Like, I need you to be real linear about our actions in this fight right here because of what is happening right here, right now. So be clear around your actions and your work streams. Situation, action, next one please. And then your results are laid out in terms of how do I achieve this. What you see on the screen, it may be hard to see from a distance, are upcoming activations that are happening that we put in our Kairos rhythm. And we're very clear in saying to people that at the end of the day, we have to be practical of the timeline of success, chronos to kairos. And so the responsibility that we have here is finding all the places where your fellow freedom fighters are. Because there's a lot of people who didn't make it down to Tulsa these days, but it doesn't mean they're not on the team. And so that means, how do we go find who else is on the team and go support them? And that does not mean that you have to only support them if you are the one that is participating. You could just be chilling in the room. It's always good to be there and give people the support that they need. Next one, please. So, Chronos, Kairos. That's my contact information if we can be helpful and be following in this regard. I try to be very practical in how we map out our strategies. So if you wouldn't mind, if you can open your phones for a second, I'm going to give you an opportunity to join our efforts here. Open your text messages, your ability to text message. This is your one opportunity when you're in church where you're allowed to text right now and what is going on in real time. You're going to text the word Kairos, which you can see on your screen right there, Kairos, to this phone number, 917-983-0800. 917-983-0800 to that word Kairos. What did we just do? We just got connected together in the Kairos community so that we can do our part of getting more freedom fighters to help you in your communities. We have an active list of about 18,000 people that we're rocking with on a pretty regular basis. We do activation around the country. Robin has blessed us by being a speaker virtually and in person. I want you to know that you're not alone on the team. This is how I close. I think about often the responsibilities of the house. And when we think about the dynamic of reparations, it's not just around economic justice, but it's also around housing justice and other elements around this. I almost died twice. Got your attention right now? I was born with a heart murmur on Christmas night. Mama was in the NICU, I was in the NICU. Mama recognized it. She said the last thing she remembers is that we're losing her. 2001, I fell asleep at the wheel coming back from Pennsylvania, in the hills of Pennsylvania. I was coming back from Evanston, actually, in my freshman year to New York. And only because of the grace of God, there was no car behind me, no car in front of us. And because it was the end of the freshman year, the amount of luggage that we had in the car, me and my boy Eric, weighed the car down when I hit the dirt. Six days before, I wrote out something to myself that still hangs in my mama's fridge. It said, "Dear God, may today be my greatest day. Greater than the great day I had a day before, but my goal has not been met unless tomorrow is the greatest of them all." I say that to say that when we talk about this work, if I lose that Chronos moment on that day, I would have had more Kairos down the line. Kairos meaning that I was able to be in Evanston and go to Northwestern and have a chance to then have an opportunity to meet this man named Barack Obama, who changed my life when I was trained by him in 06 and then worked for him. And then go and get elected and go and work in the White House. And my mama held up a booklet. And I was like, "Mama, why are you so quiet?" And she said, "Baby, we went from no house to the White House." My mama was homeless in Jamaica. She slept on church pews at Evanston United Methodist Church in Jamaica. And we said we went from no house in Jamaica to the Black House at Northwestern, to the White House in DC, to the State House in Albany. The responsibility we have when talking about reparations is that you are providing justice for someone in their house. That is why we're doing this work. You're not doing it for yourself, you're not doing it for your own glory. It's for the person that has been waiting for generations of justice. Because we have the house that we have to protect. It's the reason why it says, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you. That is why we are doing this work. It is about ensuring that we can repair, but it's about ensuring that we will win. God bless you, everybody.